Good late afternoon, everybody. I don't know if I know everyone, but my name is Tony Pisa. I represent the board for GAA today as Marie had to step out. I was a 14-year Starbucks partner, most recent as regional vice president for the Pacific Northwest. Have been gone from Starbucks now for, almost about 3 years. And I joined the GAA. Why we exist is that, we have a great love of people and we have a great love of coffee. And why not just continue to take that with us as many of us are starting our different journeys after leaving Starbucks. Just remember that and spread the word out there that anybody can participate, that works at Starbucks today or has worked at Starbucks in our events. So kind of get more people involved and let them know what we're doing. They can join, these Zoom sessions and hopefully in the near future, some in-person events as we start getting more vaccinated and opening up, which is really exciting. I don't know, on a day like today where you hit 70 degrees, it's so beautiful up here. Unbelievable. But we're here for you. I mean, we're here to support you on what next part of your journey that you're embarking on. Many of you are already. Just so you know that the GAA now represents over 18 countries and 2,000 members, which is pretty exciting. I saw that number the other day. I could not believe we hit the 2,000 mark, which was exciting. The meeting today is going to be recorded so that we can share it with other people in different time zones. So if you have questions, if you wouldn't mind staying on mute and just put it in the chat button, and our lovely and fearless friends, Alex and Courtney on the background, will take those chats and share them out and answer your questions. But also to let you know that we're going to have a drawing. We're going to pull 2 names and we'll do that at the end with an exciting prize to come. Tonight's event is the first in a springtime series of inspired stories. As most of you have probably already seen, we're featuring Major Cohen, a longtime partner and coffee guru, I would say tea guru as well, who recently retired from Starbucks to write his first book. Now, for me, Major, in 2004, when I had 3 C's, and I was up here in Seattle, from Southern California, and I just remember sitting in this huge room with, it was probably at the time, 100 district managers. And I remember sitting there and you have this huge tray of tea and coffee samples. And I was just new to this new environment. And you opened my entire world to just some amazing smells and sights and sounds. And it was really, really exciting. So that's ingrained in here. Just know that you embedded that brain with this amazing experience to this day. Today, what's going to happen is Lara, as in Lara Croft, Lara Wyss, is going to be interviewing Major today. And she was a partner from 2002 to 2012. She also now owns her own PR firm, which is also featured on the GAA platform if you want to get acquainted. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Lara. And thank you, Lara, and thank you, Major.
You are welcome. And sorry, I was reading during much of your introduction. It was just riveting. I could not pull away from this. So thank you, Major, for writing this. So as Tony said, I'm Lara Wyss. I was a Starbucks partner from 2002 to 2012, 10 years to the day, actually. And when I started, there were 2,500 stores, not even in every state in the US. And when I left, there were 17,000 stores in 53 countries. So that was a lot. And I think the stock split 4 times in that 10 years. So that was a lot of growth. What brought me to the Green Apron Alliance, those 10 years were so intense and so formidable and so amazing. It just really shaped so much of who I am that it's really hard to take Starbucks out of the girl, even though the girl's out of Starbucks. So with that, I would like to turn it over to a partner in crime. We worked together the entire time I was there. So I'd like to introduce our coffee master extraordinaire, Major Cohen.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for those kind words, Tony and Lara. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys today. And I know already we won't have enough time. I'll try to talk quickly. There's a lot that I want to say. This is always the case. I left just last June after 25 and a half years. And it was a surprise to me that I left then, but circumstances a year ago exactly, both in the world and also my role at Starbucks, some things changed. And I was really in a situation where I was, at that time, I was working in coffee education supporting CAP, China Asia Pacific, and I was living in Seattle. And I was traveling the 2 years prior to that moment last year. I had traveled about 6 months of each of those years. So I was out of the country a lot. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like heading into the virus, knowing that I was in a job that was based in Asia and I was sitting in Seattle. And I was going to turn 70 sometime in the next few months. I've turned 70 already.
Not. No, you did not.
Yeah, I did.
No, you did not.
But I said, I never really think about retiring or thought about retiring. And then I started to think about it. And the next thing I knew, I called Angela Liss and I said, Angela, I'm going to retire. And she said, no, you're not going to retire. And I did. And so, I have to say, in answer to your thought or question about what's it like? Do I like it? I do like it. The thing that I like the most is that I have unencumbered time with Anne. Some of you know Anne and my dog, that I realize now was seriously constricted by the work that I was doing, in spite of the fact that I loved it and I loved them more than anything. And I'm with you guys today because I also celebrate my entire life, both at Beaver Country Day School and here at Starbucks, and now here with you guys. I celebrate people, and I understand that I'm not sitting here today, nor am I the man that I am if not for Starbucks. Starbucks has really done so much. I often think more for me than I ever really did for it, but I'm thrilled to be with you guys today and spend some time. And I see this much as I see Coffee for Dummies opening a doorway. And so Great. Now the doorway's open.
Thank you. The great Major. Quickly, how many stores were there when you started at Starbucks? And then
so it was 1995. I think it was in the probably 300 or 400 is what I remember the number. We were quickly talking about 2000 by the year 2000, which right. I know we eclipsed well before 2000, and we never really celebrated that. But that was the big thing when I was a store partner.
Great. So, and now there's like a bazillion by the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't have the number at hand, although I used to have it whenever I was working for you guys. I used to have it written down somewhere, number of partners, number of stores, like every minute. So
yeah. Oh, I don't think I said what department I was in. I was in the global communications department. My last role was director of global consumer PR, consumer and brand PR. And that's why I worked closely with Major. So, when we think about, Coffee for Dummies, of course, it seems very natural that you would write it. But then when I think about how does that even happen? This is like a very well-established franchise. How does Major Cohen become known as the expert in all things coffee?
So it's a story I love to tell because it's typical of much of my life. But just about 2 years ago, sitting in the Coffee Workshop 9 room, my cell phone rang, and it was a strange call. I answered it, and it was someone from Nestle. And it was someone I didn't know. They introduced themselves and said that they worked for Nestle, and they had been in a class that I had facilitated as part of coffee education. We were supporting Nestle and did a big deal with them not long after that. But this person said, I wanted to see if it would be okay if I shared your name with someone. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I was at a dinner party and someone at the dinner party worked for Wiley. Do you know the Dummies franchise? And I said, I sure do. I have Dummies, DOS for Dummies, and I have Windows for Dummies, and I have Photoshop for Dummies. That was my Dummies library. And she said, well, I was talking with this person from Wiley, Dummies, and I asked them, because I'm in the coffee business, if they had a coffee for Dummies in their lineup. And they have a long time franchise. Laura's right. It's over 20 years, and it's sort of like the Cliff's Notes. You guys probably, I lived with my Cliff Notes and not so much with Dummies, but I was surprised to hear that they didn't have an author. And this person said, I would love to give your name to them if you're interested in writing a book. And I had already begun quite a few times to think about writing a book, and also had been told by many, many people, gosh, you should write a book. And so I knew somewhere in my future there was a book, or more than one book. But I said, sure, give them my name. And not long after that, I got a call from someone in New Jersey who worked for Dummies, and they shared kind of that they had heard about me and was I interested in writing a book? And I said I was, but I said, I have a full-time job, that I'm very busy, and I am not writing a book. And I joked the other day with Laura, because I could only imagine what Marianne Duong would say if I had gone to see her while I was still working full-time for Starbucks and said, listen, I want to write a book on the side called, it's not going to happen. Anyways, I said to the Wiley representative, if you're willing to wait, I'd be more than happy to do it when it works in my world. And so as soon as I knew that I was going to retire, I got back in touch with them. And I said, okay, I'm going to be yours as of June 1st. And they said, wonderful. And so we made an arrangement. I was assigned an editor, and almost to the day that I was officially retired from Starbucks, I was working for Wiley, which was really, you all know me one way or another, but you understand that really for the last 10 years of my time at Starbucks, I decided what I wanted to do. Yeah. To a large degree. I sort of picked my involvements, and I didn't have an editor who I didn't even really know, who didn't know anything about coffee, who was essentially my boss, organizing my world to deliver material to him on a schedule so that we could get this book out in the time of COVID. It was the most crazy experience that I've ever had. And I would tell you that I was thrilled that I was doing it, but it wasn't easy all the time. And I actually thought about quitting at one point, because I said, this is just crazy. I'm not sure I really want to do this, but I knew I really did want to do it.
Well, and Major, you're such a shrinking violet. I'm sure it was, difficult for the editor to understand where you were coming from. But yeah. And for those of you who don't know Major, holy cow, that man has got so much energy. There's no way that he was going to, be sitting in the lawn chair, sipping his iced tea and doing nothing. So it just makes total sense. Now, can you share with us a little bit about who is this book for, and what, if you could only pick one takeaway, what do you think the key takeaway would be?
Yeah, the book is really for everyone. What I hope is that people who know about coffee, when they look for a resource, that they think of Coffee for Dummies, because I think I've written a perfect entry-level book, which is what Dummies wants. That's exactly what they want. It's that doorway that I referred to. But because I've worked for so many years in the industry, and many of you don't know that I began to support the Specialty Coffee Association about 5 years ago. And I went back to school and I got the highest level certification from the Specialty Coffee Association to teach barista skills, that's on the espresso machine, and brewing skills. So I'm an authorized SCA trainer. At the time that I got licensed, there was 3 in Seattle and there was 100 in the United States. And it was, God bless Jeff Miller, who was willing to support me to go back to school, because it was the hardest thing that I have ever done until I wrote Coffee for Dummies. But once I realized what Chad, the editor who I mentioned, he really had to do a lot of education for me to explain to me what a Dummies book is really all about. Because I had a book in mind. I sort of thought I was going to write somewhat of a textbook. I have a memoir. There's a memoir in here that I'm going to write. Many of you know that I graduated from a photography school. And so I've already got a publisher interested in a photography book because of having this book now. So there's a lot of books, but the one that Dummies wanted me to write was their book that was this entry level. And I know what's out there. Many of you guys know, if I asked you to tell me what's the best books on coffee right now, you would probably pull out James Hoffman's book. You'd pull out Mark Pendergrass's book on history. There's some amazing books in my library and your library available to everyone. And I knew that Dummies was going to join that group. There was two things that I really wanted to put that I didn't believe were in any coffee book. And the first one is really the history that many of us, we were all part of it, that started when specialty coffee started up until now. So Starbucks is celebrating 50 years history. So the industry that we all worked in is 51 years old, 52 years old. No one's really written anything about that time frame to explain to a consumer today, how did we get to where we are today? Where did it come from? It didn't just happen. It didn't happen 100 years ago. And so I saw in Coffee for Dummies, I saw an opportunity to share that history from my perspective, because I've lived it either as a customer for George Howell's Coffee Connection when I was teaching at Beaver Country Day School, where George and I sat at his counter almost every day. And then fold that into my work at Starbucks, where I've been for 25 and a half years, part of the work that we did. And Starbucks, no denying it, no surprise to any of you, we built the industry.
Yeah.
The industry that exists today owes everything to Starbucks. So that was important to me to share it. The other piece that I think is a key takeaway that won't surprise any of you, because we all live this. Already today in this call, we've talked about how important people are. One of the things that I know, with my foot in both places, one side in specialty coffee being an instructor with the SCA, the other side at Starbucks, is that very few people know about the people. And from my work training baristas, I try to be an advocate for the baristas more than anyone. I did that when I was a Starbucks partner, and I do it as a SCA representative, because the barista is the driver for all of it. And all the other people are hugely important. And as you guys all know, it's a people-driven industry, and the people are not mentioned, noted, respected. So what I did in Coffee for Dummies is I figured out a way to highlight just some of the people who have impacted me, who I've encountered. And with all due respect, there's thousands and thousands of people who have made huge contributions, but I can't write about all of them, but I can pick some really.
I wasn't in there.
You know what, Laura? There's a lot of people. I wish. Maybe that's the next book. Maybe it's just the people.
There you go.
But what I tried to do.
I needed to send Chad a bribe, your editor. I don't know.
I just tried to pick people who I thought represented parts of the industry that I thought were unrecognized, and that I've touched. And so again, the bottom line for me with Coffee for Dummies is not that it has everything in it, but that it has at least enough about everything you might want to know, so that you figure out, if you're even remotely curious, where do you go next? And then the book gives me an opportunity to say, if you're interested, this is where you might go next. And so that's one of the cool things about a dummy book.
Nice. Well, I just, when you're saying like what the dummy people want, I just wonder, is their business card, does Chad's business card say Chad, editor for Dummies?
Yes.
I mean, I would not share that business card with anybody, because he's your editor. That kind of implies, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. Okay. So that is great. I can't say enough about how great this book is. I have actually, when I was at Starbucks, part of my role was to work with book authors, and this is really, really well done, and it's informative. It has all the things, and it is really easy to read, and it goes by step, except for the omission of me. Everything else is perfect. So I'm going to give it a 99.9% thumbs up.
Yeah, but I will point out, Lara, I definitely threw some lovely positive shade at the communications team by highlighting in my acknowledgments Holly and Marianne, who were part of your team. And so I was so glad that I had an opportunity to thank them, because I could never have done what I did if it were not for that team.
Yeah, amazing. They're amazing. And so is Alan.
Indeed. Yeah,
sorry.
There it is. No, I knew it. I knew Alan was there. Yeah.
There's a lot of us comms folks on here. So anyway, since we have worked together quite a bit, Major, I kind of know some secrets. And since I had promoted this event as spilling the tea over coffee, I want to show a picture, and I want to see if anybody recognizes this, and see if anybody knows what this is. Can you guys see it?
I do.
And are we noticing anything kind of around here? Okay. So I hear that is Little Master, and he started in Japan, and he sort of resembles you. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that, about Little Master.
So of all the markets that I was involved in, probably the one that I had the most connection with over the longest time was the market in Japan, Starbucks Japan. And I got a call one day from the marketing team, and they said the team in Japan would like to create a mascot based on you. And they're going to call it the Little Master, and it's going to be the animated mascot for the Discoveries Beverage series. And I said, does Marianne Duong know about this? And they said, yes. And I said, fine, then do whatever it is you want to do. As long as you've got her permission, then I'm in.
Yep, good.
And so that the Little Master was created. Can I share the story I shared with you about? So the way that I discovered that the Little Master had come to life, you guys, was not, they didn't send me pictures of it, or I'd never even got to see what it looked like. I went into the cupping room one day on the 8th floor when we still used it for hosting guests before we built the workshop. And there was 9 or 10 guests from Japan, Starbucks Japan. And always whenever we greeted guests in the cupping room, they were deferential. They were kind of holding on because they were afraid of breaking cups or spilling things. So it was always a little bit awkward at first. But this group was really awkward. They were stiff, and they did something really weird. As I came in the door, they looked at the and then they followed me across the room with they were really looking. And I can't remember who was there with me. I think it was Marianne, but someone from communications was clearly there. And I said, is there a reason that they're behaving kind of oddly? Normally people didn't.
Alan. I think it was Alan, because
it could have been. It could have been, but they said to me, well, the reason is because they have their little master cutouts that they want you to sign. And I said, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden, this person said, well, you can show him now. And out of their pockets came these little dangly keychain things that were the Little Master cutouts that were me in an apron with no hair and my beard and the whole thing. And whoever it was from communication said, would you mind signing them now so that we can get that out of the way, so then we can focus on the things we're going to do. And so that's how I discovered that the Little Master was real.
Well, that's one way to find out. And that is a really amazing story. Another project that we worked on together was the bottle Frappuccino launch in China. And specifically, we did the kickoff event in Shanghai. I am wearing the t-shirt from the event with my coffee bean necklace. And that was a really, really tense event because Howard was there. We had the head of Pepsi from China was there. It was a very, very intense situation. I will share one funny anecdote, which was I was sitting right behind Howard. And one of the first thing we did was we had given everybody a Frappuccino bottle full of freshly roasted coffee beans, and we had them open it and smell the coffee because, we wanted to make that connection. And so that was great. Everybody loved it. And they gave, the reporters were standing up just saying, giving us giant Valentines about how great that was, which Howard loved. Then we, we're going on with the speeches, and in China, it's very, very formal. And they were sort of volunteering us that we were going to have a government official speak at our event. And not everybody from the Starbucks side was interested in having this government official speak. And there's no way to tell her she could not speak. So she started speaking. We had, it's also very common in Asia to have like an MC run your press event. And so she was interpreting for us. She did not interpret this Chinese official just to keep it moving along because some people get antsy. So anyway, I'm sitting behind him and he's like, why is she talking? This is going on too long. Oh my God. And so I whispered next to the woman next to me, Vicky Tsai, who is the now creator of Tatcha, which is an amazing brand you should check out. And I said, okay, Vicky, she was the brand manager for the launch. I said, Vicky, pass this down to your guests. When I start clapping and saying, woohoo, you all start doing that too. And she was like, okay. So we all started, woo! And this poor government official was like, oh, thank you. And then the MC escorted her off. And so that is like, PR people have no pride, just FYI. But anyway, so Major, after that event, you were hanging out at a Starbucks store, and I think this was your first time in Shanghai. Were you there?
I'll tell you, Lara, a quick story that I'll share. That oftentimes in my career, people said to me, "How is it that you have such an easy time public speaking in the way that you speak?" And I shared remembering the briefing. So that was the very first time that I ever traveled with Howard and you guys. And I remember being invited to the briefing. Mm-hmm. And the briefing was probably 2 hours long with all the details that you guys always put together for him. And I remember sitting in on that and listening to you tell him what it was that you wanted him to speak to. And he took a few notes, but he didn't really take many. And then the next day, he stood up in his 15 or 20 minutes, and he basically did exactly what you guys had told him to do in the order that you had told him to do it in. It was like he had been rehearsing for 12 hours since the briefing. Yeah. And I realized that part of the reason, think about all of us had moments where we said, this guy is the greatest speaker that has ever lived when we listened to Howard. But I realized in that trip that he did a tremendous amount of preparation in order to be able to deliver what you guys knew was the right thing to say in the moment. And I for all of the years after that, I always worked with Marianne and with the team. And I basically said to them, I want Howard's briefing for this so that I'm prepared wherever you're going to send me. And it really ended up being instrumental in my being able to be successful, because I understand it's easy to talk from your heart, but you need to have some facts as well when you're doing what we all did.
Well, Marianne is a peach, because a Howard briefing book is hours. And just like an executive interview briefing sheet is like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
but I saved them all. I have every briefing book that Marianne ever created with the people on her team, because they were just incredibly deep documents that really were, they are my travels all the years that I worked for Starbucks.
Nice. Excellent. Okay. That's great. Were you there when Howard played that partner in ping pong?
No.
Okay. So we had a partner in Shanghai who was the Special Olympics champion in ping pong.
Right.
And so Howard played him. I'm going to say Howard was really good. I think he practiced that too. Yep. And of course, he did not beat the champion, the Chinese, Special Olympics champion in table tennis, but he held his own, and it was really a good experience. Did you happen to see any? Has Little Master gone beyond the areas of Japan?
No, Little Master actually retired before I did. I think the Japanese team moved on from that marketing, and I think they still have Discovery beverages, but they bring them to the world in a different way, and the Little Master's not part of it.
So when you saw the mural in Shanghai, that was actually you, not Little Master?
Yeah, it was actually me. There's, yeah.
Was that the Shintendi store, or?
It's not Shintendi. That this was a store near the office where they had an upstairs, and they had commissioned an artist to put a lot of significant faces from Starbucks into this really cool kind of black and white mural. And I looked at it, and I saw Belinda, and I saw John Culver. And then, as I told you yesterday, Marianne said to me, "Sit down here." And so I sat down in this seat, and she said, "Look to the side behind you, who you're sitting next to." And there was my face was on the wall, but there was so many faces of partners that I didn't see it until Marianne pointed out that it did bear a resemblance to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we also worked on the Via launch together. Yep. And, that, for people who were there for that was quite an intense experience as well. From a PR perspective, I will never forget. I'll be on my deathbed, and I'm going to remember the meeting I was in when they made me sign an NDA, and I'm like, WTF, like, I've signed papers when I started, blah, blah, blah. I'm an employee. And they said, okay, so here's the deal. We're going to launch this instant coffee. And I literally felt like somebody punched me in the gut. And I was like, how are we going to do that? And just to set the context, at that time, the third wave independent coffee houses were really getting more credible and differentiating from us as a chain. And at the same time, Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's were upping their coffee game, and there was McCafe coming up, and McDonald's came up with the $3 is dumb, and now even when I go to Starbucks now, I'm like, $4 is dumb, $5 is dumb. I think my daughter's mocha today was $6. It was so dumb. It was $6 is for dummies, but anyway, I bought it. So that, and at the time also, the instant coffee market in the US was declining at 1%. And the folks who were drinking it were 65 and older. So there's like, I don't have an MBA, but I'm going to go out and say that those are a lot of bad things kind of stacked up. And, so being charged with launching that and making sure that the public thought it was a good idea was challenging. I mean, of course, it wouldn't have, if it was a bad product, I couldn't have like pulled that rabbit out of a hat, but it was a great product. So what did you think when you first heard about VIA?
So
also we were going to call it Stardust. Hello, I'm a very naive
I was
person.
on the inside.
Even I know that's drugs.
Yeah. I was on the inside, but not really on the inside, which was consistent with most of my work in the coffee department. I never really did any of the work of coffee, but I was responsible, thanks to Mary Williams, to be aware of everything. And so I understood that we were going to do an instant coffee as well. And I remember the day that I found out, in fact, within 5 minutes, I burst into Dub Hayes' office, uninvited, and said, what in the hell are we thinking that we're going to make an instant coffee? And he always had a great demeanor. He kind of said, calm down, cowboy, and let's talk about this. And then he said some other things that I won't repeat right now, right here. But he was very, very clear with me that he was interested in my input, sort of, but not really. But I immediately got to be the one who was the most noisy naysayer. And as the most noisy naysayer, they constantly were bringing me examples of the work in progress so that I could taste it. And they could not have been any better. I mean, I remember sitting with Andrew a number of times where I tasted it and we all have great palates. We all worked in a coffee company. Everybody understands, you guys all understand coffee better than most of the human beings in the world. And I knew when it was tasting bad. That's not hard to figure out most of the time. And so I said, this is tasting bad. And I don't know how we can possibly think that we're going to sell this to anyone. And so I was there throughout the whole process as Don Valencia and Howard and everybody was involved. And then I remember one day going with Andrew to the cupping room and we tasted what was in fact the final version. And I said, this is way, way better. This actually works. I can see this and I'm amazed. It wasn't that I took it lightly. And then as a result, I ended up being the partner invited from the coffee department to go to New York with the whole entourage. And I did the coffee tasting for the Wall Street analysts and the media in that beautiful studio that we disguised as a white and black studio. And then we dropped all the curtains after I did the tasting and didn't reveal anything, but it was Starbucks Columbia. Then Howard came out and said, so that was pretty good coffee that Major helped us taste. And then he revealed that it was our Starbucks Via.
Yeah, that was really, such an amazing moment. We had worked really hard to kind of ensure that we didn't have a leak. And what we had learned was that when the DMs would be informed, that's when the leaks would start happening. And I'm not saying it was the DMs because there were other things happening at that same time, but we had our event the same day that the DM level was being informed. And one day before there was a leak and we were getting asked questions and we just held our ground. We just said, there's no, we don't have any announcements at this time, but we knew it was critically important for people to taste it before they heard it.
Yeah.
Because if you say, and I'm sure everybody who was working at Starbucks at the time and you heard we're coming out with an instant coffee, you were like, pfft. There was nobody, I don't think, who said, yay! So anyway, yeah, that it was, so thank you, Major. Yeah, it was great. We created this taste test. Major went through it. Anne Marie was there. They dropped it, and it showed all this amazing, beautiful creative about, the process that we went through. We had passed around trays that showed the Via, which is so dark and rich and beautiful and almost looks like, velvety. And then in the other little blue coffee tray was regular instant coffee, and it looked like tan kitty litter. So just visually, it was a no-brainer. So,
and Laura, we were so far ahead of the time in the industry that it's exciting when you think about it. We knew what a game changer it was. Certainly not the only game changer that we ever had at Starbucks, but right now in specialty coffee, some of the finest roasters in the world are beginning to make instant versions of their product, which are quite good. They're equally good to Via. Of course, they're never going to look backwards and give us any credibility for having done what we did. But there's no question that was a game-changing moment and huge in our history.
Yeah. So we do have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat.
Cool.
So let's get to a couple of those. Cherie wants to know if you are doing a book tour.
So in a different world, I would be serving you guys coffee. We would have met somewhere and we would be having coffee. And we're still going to do that. I'm going to go out. I did an event for the Edmonds bookstore the other night. I've got one scheduled with my alma mater, Rochester Institute of Technology. We'll make sure that you guys all get the invite for that. Seattle Magazine is going to do a feature in their next issue about Coffee for Dummies. I'm super thrilled about that. But all of this is without people. So I plan on making it possible as soon as we're all in a state where we can start meeting. I'm going to start showing up in places where I can make people coffee and talk coffee and then share Coffee for Dummies.
Great. Well, if you need any PR support,
Awesome.
I'll know somebody.
Good.
Let's see. Again, shameless, no pride, shameless, totally shameless. Okay, we have another question from Annie, who wants to know what your favorite coffee is.
My favorite coffee is the one that I had last. I have to tell you that in the last 10 years, especially, because as I referred to this idea that I have my feet planted in a lot of places, I've actually had a chance to taste more coffees than I ever had in my life. And I would tell you just today, I had 2 coffees from Onyx. One of them was a very rare coffee, probably $150 a pound for this one coffee, which was every bit worth it. I've had 2 Nespresso capsules. One was Starbucks Blonde. The other one was Starbucks Espresso, because I drink a lot of Nespresso. And I in my book, you'll see, I even just went through the coffees that I had last summer, and I shared my kitchen cabinet with everybody who's reading it so they could see the array of coffee that's now available to us, especially with mail order. I had the Starbucks Odyssey just 2 days ago, and I had some of the beautiful anniversary in that gorgeous bag. So I love coffee even more now than I did when I knew you guys.
Great. Yeah, that is awesome. Are there any other questions popping up? We have 10 more minutes, so I could ask for another anecdote if anybody wants to hear that. Now, Major, I know you were also in the stores when we had another transformative launch, which was the Frappuccinos. And that was also a controversial product launch. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I know some of you guys were around in 95 and 96 when we launched Frappuccino, but it's interesting when you reflect on those days at Starbucks and the luxury brand that we were building that was so coffee centric. And I would share with you candidly, yesterday I was reading Standart magazine. I don't know if you guys read Standart, but Standart, Standart, I mentioned it in Coffee for Dummies. It's the best magazine in coffee right now. It's unbelievable. It's created in Europe. It's absolutely beautifully printed. It's a gorgeous magazine. And yesterday I read an article and they referred to Starbucks's bygone days when we were building a luxury brand. In an article that really wasn't about that, but it was, we were so coffee centric in my store in Waban, Massachusetts. It was the probably 5th or 6th store in Massachusetts, all coffee people working in the store. And we were crazed about coffee. And all of a sudden we get this message that we're going to sell milkshakes or something, that we're going to make in a blender with ice. And, I remember, again, long before VIA, but in that moment, I'm thinking, this is insane. This is not coffee. It's something else. We're going to become an ice cream parlor. And then reminiscing, you guys remember, we were 10 feet ahead of ourselves, always trying to catch up when it came to the first 6 months or the year of Frappuccino. We didn't have a blender. We didn't have a way to abate the noise. We didn't have anything ready, and we were full steam ahead. We were making, right away, we made 175 Frappuccinos a day, 1 week in Massachusetts in my store. We went from nothing to an insanity. And we were making it in these noisy blenders, and you would put the whole thing together and you put the blender on and you'd forget the lid and you'd push the button and the thing went boom. And there it was. Everywhere you'd have Frappuccinos. So they solved that problem. They put us in those R2D2 metal cabinets. And then, of course, it only took about 2 days to blow up a Frappuccino in one of those. And then you had an even worse mess because you had that black rubber falling off with the door that didn't really close, and Frappuccino everywhere. It was always sticky. It was horrible. And yet it was so successful. And so it's crazy when you think about those things. Those are the kind of things that people who order Frappuccinos today, they should know that. They should know some of that just to have a little laugh, because they would think this is such a polished company. That could never happen to Starbucks, not to my store. And I guess that sort of is part of what I try to do when I tell the story of the people and the things involved, because I think having that grounding from then gives you a much different understanding and perhaps appreciation of what is now.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. And I know one of the key takeaways I had after leaving Starbucks, I went to Silicon Valley and was working in communications for tech companies, which is 100% the opposite culture of Starbucks. And it was like a knife fight with grenades and napalm and everything instead of a big group hug. And one of the things that I really didn't recognize while I was at Starbucks was that everybody, even if there was some infighting or some people who weren't as organized as others or thinking things were a bad idea, or little R2D2s that exploded, everybody was trying to move the ball down the court the same way.
Yep.
In tech, it is all about me. I'm generalizing. And, that was a real rude awakening. And, what's been imprinted on me is that servant leadership. Mm-hmm. And, I think outside of Starbucks, it's hard to explain that empowering people, kind of being nice, is not a sign of weakness. Right. And it doesn't mean you're a doormat. So, I don't know if anybody else has had those types of experiences as well. You've only been out 6 months. Major,
but I've lived that, and I totally understand what you're saying. That there's we really lived I would even call it a spoiled existence, and I think that especially when you go backwards, because I think because of the size that Starbucks is now and the direction, it's harder and harder. But even think what they're working on today with the uplift the everyday and focusing on the people. And what has happened in the last year, when people say to me, well, what do you think of Starbucks today? And I said, the coffee guy in me is a little bit disappointed, because I think there's some opportunities on the table when it comes to coffee that we're not seeing them realized at Starbucks today. But the things that we are doing are so unbelievable in support of people and in delivering for customers what they're really after. You can't fault that. It's just direction. And I realize that sometimes I think I'm sort of an old coffee guy. So of course I'm going to think that, because I want everything to be pure. And yet I survived for 25 and a half years at Starbucks, understanding that it isn't about what I want. It's about what we all want and what's in the best interest of this thing that we're trying to do, move forward down the court. So I would not change a thing in my own career.
So well said. So well said.
Yeah, that was a great summary. Well, Major, thank you so much
Thank you guys
for sharing all of your coffee wisdom. It was so great to catch up with you. And, two lucky people are going to get a copy. The rest of you, go ahead and pick this up. It's only $19.99. That is less than $20. That is like, you could get 3 Starbucks lattes would be more than this. Maybe 2 if you got venti. So.
Well, Laura, 2 people are going to win right now.
Yay.
2 people are going to win signed copies right now.
Those will be collector's items.
That's right. First off, thanks for supporting Lara and interviewing Major today. Major, when I think about storytelling, a lot of what you were sharing invoked emotion, right? And it invokes smells and sounds and sights. As you were telling the stories around coffee, I could actually smell the coffee grinds, which was pretty cool. And then when you were talking about Frappuccino, I'm like, oh man, for every one of us who started as a partner training on Frappuccino, and then you go home and you literally smell like Frappuccino.
Yeah, sticky, always sticky.
Every dog and cat and kid in the block, loved you and smell you half a mile away. I miss the vanilla via, pouring that in a cold glass of milk and shaking that up on a nice walk. Something I wish they'd bring back. And to all of us here, I can guarantee you on this call, you're no little master to us. You're a master major. So I just want to say thank you. Big round of applause.
Thank you very much. It's it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to have been given the opportunities that I've had. So thank you.
Well, thanks for your support. So the 2 people that won are Sherry Carl. Yay, Sherry. And our good friend, Carl Setzer.
All right.
Both former Global Com folks.
Yep.
And we did not stack the deck or have any influence on that.
Hey, you had good turnout. So the fact is you had good ratios to begin with. So congrats to both of you, and you'll be getting that signed book. I think Alex will be taking care of getting your information and sending that over. I just have a couple house cleaning closing thoughts for you all. Hope you enjoyed the first of our series. Thanks for participating. If you haven't paid your dues yet, I'm reminding all those alums that are part of the GAA, please go out and pay your dues, because it helps pay for events like this and hopefully crossing our fingers, live ones in the near future in person. Also getting other people to join the GAA. So as you get time and spend time with good friends, remember, as Major just shared, it's not just about the coffee, it's really about the people. And that's why the GAA was created. So look forward to you guys staying engaged, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks again. Great to see you all.
Thank you.